We can call the meeting to order. I call the Finance Committee meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. on Thursday, May 21st. Meetings of the Finance Committee are recorded for transmission on Rutland Public Access Television and YouTube. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, paragraph 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Rutland Finance Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at Rutland's website at townofrutland.org. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: by watching Rutland Community Television live on channel 192 and on the town's website, www.townofrutland.org, or by viewing a recording of the meeting on the town's YouTube page following the meeting. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Rutland's website a video recording transcript and other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Wow.
I know, isn't it a mouthful?
From now on, we should just say, because we can't do anything, this is what we're doing. Okay, first item on the agenda is minutes from April 30th, 2020 virtual meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we accept the minutes as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I need a roll call. Ted?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Carol? Can you unmute her?
Sure. There you go, Carol.
Okay, whenever you get in.
Peter?
That was David.
Yep.
Aye to the motion. And that was David saying he's having internet problems, but he'll be here.
Okay, and Narwhal, aye. Okay, so the minutes have been accepted.
Yep.
Okay, so the next item is town meeting date discussion. It was voted on Monday night that our town meeting will be Saturday, the 27th of June at 4 o'clock.
Correct.
In the folder, there's a picture of how, what, where, when, and what we got to do. It's all pretty colors, and just show up and someone will direct us where to go.
Sterling is actually going to be taking our plan because they liked it so much. So.
Did you charge him for it?
Right, exactly. That should make up the 146K.
It's okay. Now we have the fiscal year 21 budget discussion. So everyone, in our folders is the level funded budget with the COLA, cost of living adjustment. That was, we all received a letter from the town treasurer regarding for the non-union personnel.
Karen, could I pipe in here?
Sure.
So the conversation that Ian and I had during the week was that we would look to put the COLAs back in and see how much that increased the budget by. There were some positions that we had put in for actually them getting a raise that was actually greater than their COLA that was listed. The town clerk's position, for example. The reason behind that was that last year, it was said from Margaret when we were in the pre-planning stages, and then when I took over, that the town clerk would get a step raise. When the after town meeting, we then realized that we had only put in for about half a step. So we put in that extra half here, so that actually is double what the COLA would be there. And there are some other positions that we talked about having a discussion with their department head about putting a COLA in, particularly those who are part-time. But as of now, all of the COLAs for the people who work full-time hours are in the budget. That's why we are up to 155, I believe.
152, 255.
All right, thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
That's there. I do, Karen, just so you're aware, I do see Leah has her hand up. That is because we have 3 members of the select board now, so we have a quorum of them, so they need to open their meeting.
Okay.
So, you know what? Okay, who opens?
Leah as the officer.
This is Leah Whiteman. I hereby open the Board of Selectmen meeting in conjunction with the FinCom meeting at 6:05 p.m.
But anyway, getting back to that, so we weighed out a couple of those options here. Some of the positions were just starting as early as last week, so we held off on that COLA that's there. So we'll be going over that again to make sure that we are working there. In terms of the shortfall that we see there, we had some more discussions, or I had some more discussions with our policyholders at the state, DOR and DLS, Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services. I had an email sent to me about the number of acronyms I use in these meetings. So if you don't know what that means, please let me know. About how to come up with these, because this isn't unique to us. It's something that every other Wachusett town is facing. It's something that Paxton and us had been almost equal to each other since the start of this. And then this just doesn't help on top of that. And the quote that I'd like to use to describe this is the one that our town accountant, Dan Haynes, said when we were discussing this yesterday. And it was the state telling us to use our rainy day fund, which is our stabilization account, for help here. This is the hurricane for the rainy day fund with everything that we're dealing with here. There was a group from the state who put out a revenue projection sheet that said they're projecting that revenues are going to be down up to 20%. So just all of those things combined, that's why the state is really saying this is the rainy day. We're using our rainy day fund. The cities and towns should also be using their rainy day fund. It's also projected that this isn't going to be something that no one knows how long this is going to last. But as we start to reopen, it's a lot more of a hopeful outlook than it is a negative outlook, on the grounds that, one, people have been kept inside for so long and not being able to go places, that as these places start to open up, we'd see a large boom in those industries. But also on the grounds that businesses during this time period have had to think outside the box and get creative as to how to operate with more of an online presence and a social media presence and a call-in, curbside pickup, and so much there. That now that they have these new aspects in place, they may even carry those on in the future as a way to complement their in-person services, to make sure that they're going there to try to catch up for the amount of time that's in between when they are allowed to open again and when their customers also feel safe to go out again. Because while they still may be open, people might still feel worried for their own public health concerns about going out in public and things of those natures. So that's why it's really viewed as 21 is going to be the big hit, but 22 we should be close to stabilizing again, if not stronger, as a result of just people wanting to get out of the house again. So that's why they're recommending using the stabilization account and then having that extra time to move forward, because if things go as projected, this should be a one-time massive hit that we can recover from later on. Now, is it smart usually to use stabilization when you already are using free cash in the budget? Absolutely not, and they would never recommend it. I would never recommend it. But because of the extenuating circumstances, and as everyone is saying, the unprecedented times that are happening right now, that's why they're saying that's the best route to go currently. Another revenue item that I'm going to talk about a little bit later when we get to other business, if Karen okays it, is is the CARES Act. As I mentioned the last time, we have a certain allotment of CARES Act funding that I'll get into a little bit later. The guidance that we're receiving now is we cannot currently use CARES Act money to fund revenue deficits in the budget. for this fiscal year. However, there is discussions and an ongoing push from the Mass Municipal Association, from the International Cities and Towns Committee. I forget what ICMA stands for, but all of the municipal advocacy groups are pushing for next year's CARES Act funding to be used as budget revenue for operating expenses, because this isn't something, again, that's unique to Rutland. It's something that every city and town across the country is getting. So I'll explain more about that when we get to that later on. So, but how that again would work is we go in to town meeting and we say, this is our budget. We plan to fund it with raise and appropriate. That when you use that phrase, that means it's coming from any taxes or fees that we collect in general anyway. So that's property, excise, any fees from parking tickets and all that stuff that would normally go to the general fund. Then we have to say, and free cash, which is the issue that we had last year. So it'll say, and $200,000 of free cash. And then after that, it'll say, and 152 and change of stabilization money. Because we're using stabilization, that increases the threshold that town meeting has to pass the budget by from a simple majority to a 2/3 majority. Because that's taking money out of our savings account. Just like if it was a normal circumstance, if you withdrew money from your savings account more than 5 times in a month, you were charged a penalty by the federal government. They want to make sure that it's hard for us to pull out of our savings account too. So that's why that vote threshold increases. And then if that passes, it passes. Now say the state budget, which we're not expecting to be done now until August, but again, we normally don't have a passed state budget by the time town meeting happens anyway, comes in and local aid is cut a lot lower than we're projecting, and we're at that 20% or lower. What happens is we then at the anticipated fall special town meeting, we go in and we readjust things here. We do what's called a supplemental budget procedure, where we can either cut items from the budget, we can increase revenues from other places, we can increase lines in the budget. It can go either way there because it's town meeting, again, doing that. Now, the only catch with that there is it has to be done before we set the tax rate in December, which our fall town meeting is always done before that time anyway. We'll also have our new free cash number by that time as well. So that's why they're saying if you have extra revenue in your free cash that gets certified in September, you can then use that to help fund your shortfalls that come up mid-year. So that's a lot of budget and revenue talk there. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
What's the stabilization balance at this point?
996,000.
Okay.
Karen, Ted had his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Ted, sorry.
They're recommending we use all of stabilization?
Just the amount that we need for that deficit. So it's not saying replace all of our tax revenue with the $1 million that we have in stabilization. It's just saying do what you can with your normal routine, and then what's left, take that out of your stabilization account.
So if I did my math right, that's 15% of our stabilization is going to go if we keep the budget the way it is.
Correct. The bonding agencies have approved doing this for every municipality in the state, so long as that we can show within the next 10 years we have some type of plan in place to replenish this. And we technically already have that through our free cash policies that say we have to put in 10% of our, the equivalent of 10% of our operating budget from free cash into the stabilization account every fall. We aren't capped at 10%, we can go higher or lower. But that plan does help us move forward. Karen, Ted, and Mitch. Go ahead.
So the 152,000 deficit that we're looking to try and figure out, does that include the school budget with the 5.5% increase?
Yes, that includes the school budget as is. The directive we've received from the school department is to take the assessment as is. They are working at reallocating some funds from this year and encumbering those into next year, using their CARES Act money to do that, taking I think it's $400,000 out of their excess and deficiency account and using that to supplant their revenue there. They have a plan in place as well for if that's still not enough, and it's phased out in a 5-phase plan that they went over. It's basically starting with expenses such as lowering supply line items, lowering other item expenses that happen throughout the year, capping off all their oil tanks before the end of this fiscal year is done, and using the money that they saved this year to start on their oil costs now. That way they don't have to allocate for that extra oil fill next year. So those are all things that they're talking about doing. And it seems with potential personnel cuts along the way if it gets to it. But we've been told keep the budget as it stands right now, because the intermunicipal agreement that we have, which is our contract between the 5-member towns in the district, says that after April 1st, the school committee cannot give the towns a higher budget than they already gave them previously.
And if it does come in lower, we're not going to see that refund.
Most likely. Okay. It's the way the agreement is written is if it does come in lower, and it goes until the next year's assessment, whether they put it towards something else, which it wouldn't be in their budget, so it'd be an extraordinary situation. So I'm not sure if they'd be able to do that. But anything left over in the previous year is supposed to go to offset the next year's assessment per the IMA.
Offset for just the town or for all 5 towns?
For just our town. Yeah. Karen, I just see Mitch's hand is up, but it's in the icon, so that's why you might not be able to see it.
Okay.
Does anyone else think this is a really bad idea? I just want to throw that out there. This doesn't seem like I know the state's allowing us to do it. I'm just not sure of the fees. I mean, it just seems like it's a bad idea. I just wanted to put that out there.
Go ahead, Peter.
So, Mitch, I agree with you. I totally agree with you that it's a bad idea to be able to do it. And if we had any other options, it'd be something that we could go ahead and look at. But the school budget came in $750,000 above what it was last year. So if level funding was level funding, that just never happened with the schools. Your hands are tied at some point, and you have to make the best decision that you can in a very bad situation. I think the idea that the state has put us into is that they're indicating that we need to be able to provide a funding model to be able to get back to where we are today over the next 10 years, I think it is, Mike. But in that period of time, that we're going to get back there. Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Mike was saying things are looking like it might get better, but come December, if there's another spike, a real big uptick in the infection rate, hospitalization rate, and then ultimately the death rate, we could be looking at this for 2 years out. So,
I understand that, Pete. I guess my question is, and this is, I guess, maybe the FinCom. I mean, you guys are more in the realm of experts on putting these things together, but we're looking at a situation. Obviously, everyone keeps saying unprecedented. Who is putting together this 10-year plan? I mean, who's going to be tasked with doing that, one? And two, if we're in a position now to make really hard decisions and try to streamline areas where we can, would it be prudent to go through that exercise now? Because depending on what model you look at, GDP is not going to be normal in the next year or two as to what it was 4 months ago. And if you're going to have record foreclosures, commercial foreclosures because of businesses going out, this could be more than a decade before we come back to where we are, and we're going to have to make those decisions eventually, right?
Well, and while that's true, I still think that, I wouldn't want to jump the gun now because we don't have crystal balls and we don't know where it's going. I mean, I'm I'm really skeptical as to anybody that says that, as you hear on the TV, that boy, we're on the tail end of this thing and we're coming out of it. I don't believe that at all. But I'm not really sure that we're in a situation where we need to be able to take really hard measures at the moment. And as far as the 10-year plan goes, I think, as Mike had said, that we're in the process of putting 10% of the expenses into the stabilization fund. I think it's stabilization, Mike.
Yep.
In the stabilization fund every year. So there's a plan to do that,
Okay.
not just for 10 years, but ongoing.
Okay, and I think, Mike, you had set that up earlier. I mean, that's something you proactively looked at, I think, about a year ago, right?
Yeah, I did that when I started.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for answering that was just my concern, so I appreciate the time.
I mean, I'll just throw out there too that yes, in any other circumstances, I'd agree this is a terrible idea, and I'd never put my professional reputation with it. But given the circumstances that we're in and the guidance we're getting from the state, I've never ever heard of the state saying, please use your stabilization accounts. That's something they never do. They always say, please add to your stabilization accounts, not please take out of. So that in and of itself says something about where we are. And in terms of when we have those discussions, that's why the state has said, pass your budgets now with your stabilization, and if you find out that you end up having those spots, look at having those discussions in September, October, November, when your fall town meeting season comes around, when it's time to do your supplemental budgets.
Go ahead, Ted.
So what we would be relying on is that the state uses the state rainy day stabilization money to keep our state aid levels the same. Is that what you're saying they're going to do?
That's something they say they're exploring. I can't hold them to it because there's been some conversations that we've had with them where where we're getting from one group, oh, it could be that local aid is going to be a 20% reduction from what you are currently receiving this fiscal year. In other cases, they're like, but we may be using our rainy day fund to put it over. I think a lot of that deals with the legislature still trying to figure out how to meet, because there's 140 something reps and then another 100 senators, 40 senators. So trying to get them to meet virtually, which is something that wasn't allowed in the suspension of the open meeting law because they fall under a different branch of government. So the governor can't do that in an executive order. They're trying to figure out all of those logistics, and they have started to have a couple of those. So I think they're just ironing them out before they meet. But I think a lot of that's the uncertainty there too, is one, when the legislature can actually meet to pass all of this stuff. And then two, local aid is right now funded from lottery money. So for every time you go out and buy a scratch ticket, or you buy a Mega Millions ticket, or you play Keno, everything you pay that's profit for the lottery is then given to cities and towns after that. Well, since this thing has started, if someone's having some economic trouble, they're not going out and buying scratch tickets. They're not going out and buying Mega Millions tickets. Restaurants are closed, so no one's playing Keno. And buildings being closed means no one's at the casinos either. So our lottery revenue is projected to be way down. So if they were to use stabilization to help with their local aid to cities and towns through Chapter 70 to the schools, or AGA, which is unrestricted general government assistance, it'd be coming to those spots there, but they have to make sure that they can fund their actual operations just in general too. So that's why there's just everything's up in the air.
All that being said, the fact is, at this point, if we take that from stabilization, $200,000, we're kicking the can down for next year to be having the same exact discussion. That's $352,000 that next year we have to find a place to find it. Revenue's not going to go up that much.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was headed, but thank you, Karen.
I mean, we're looking at $352,000, guys. So whether we kick it down the road until next year, but I guarantee you, at this point, we're not going to have $352,000 in new revenue coming in that's going to make this all go away.
So, Karen, the 352 is the 152 plus the 200?
Yep.
Okay.
So, and we don't know where free cash is going to go next year. So there's a potential that maybe we have to use that 150 to fund something that we've already cut in this level funded budget because of an overage or of some sort. So
Okay.
we always have to count on the fact that that 150 might not be there. We say that's what we were allowed to use. If we don't have it, we can't use it.
Well, so then the only alternative then is to go in, as Mitch was suggesting, just starting to cut right now. So are we making the decision here to say we're going to accept it the way it is and recognize that it's 350K next year? Or do we say not acceptable at all? Let's not suggest that we approve or vote to recommend approval here, that we just go ahead and push it back and say everybody's got to cut whatever that percentage is.
Well, we have to make that decision as a board.
Right.
But ultimately, for as many years as I've sat on this committee, we've yet to have a good budget year. So the fact is we have an awful lot of projects that never get done. That stabilization fund might be needed to fix an oops that happened in one of those projects that we keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I mean, we don't do a lot of things. So, because we don't have the money, and the stabilization is supposed to be for emergencies. And although I think this is an emergency, I don't think it's a $152,000 emergency. My opinion is 15% is an awful lot to take out because next year we're not sure where we're going to be. But that's just my opinion.
So all right, that's a real valid opinion. So what do we do about it?
Well,
I mean, do we make a motion, have a conversation?
just have a conversation of figuring out what's the best thing that we can do.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be just one budget. In the end, I think we're going to be having several budgets ready to go for the town meeting. This isn't going to be a one and done. This is going to be, well, we can do this, or we can do this, or we can do this, and we'll flip a coin 10 minutes before the meeting.
So would it be practical to be able to ask, and I'm just asking the question because I don't know, would it be practical to be able to say to the departments to be able to give us a 2% cut, 5% cut, 7% cut, 10% cut, and have them be prepared to be able to discuss those different levels?
We have done that in the past. We usually don't go straight through because there are things that we cannot cut. But in the past, just saying what we've done in the past, we have just gone mainly to the larger. It doesn't do us any good cutting 10% from a budget that's only going to save us $30. So usually we hit, fortunately, where it hurts the most.
Regardless of the equity, I understand that. I do understand that.
If it's helpful to look at too, there's a document in your folders for this evening. It's titled FY21 Comparison, 21st of May, 2020. If you open that, that's a spreadsheet that I did for you all. I broke it down by departments, either of similar aspect or if it's one department head who oversees all of those line items in the budget. The column that's shaded in a yellowy orange, that one there is the difference between last year's budget and what they requested initially this year. And the box that's in blue is what they've initially requested this year and how much they cut to get to the current projections that we're at currently here. So if you see for the executive office, for the select board, finance committee, town administrator, town moderator, and town report, there was a $23,000 increase request. However, from the initial request to now, we've cut $19,566.99 from the FY21 request to now. So that's why you have that document there to see what we've done so far in terms of cuts.
So one thing, Peter, I don't know, and anyone, I mean, Carol and Ted, I don't know. I know one thing that we always get last minute reserve fund transfers for are the town council. And depending upon the year and what's going on, we need the reserve fund for that. Now, depending upon a really bad year, we sometimes have to use both free cash and reserve fund. Depending upon when we cut things like overtime and stuff like that from our departments, if God forbid there be a bad year or someone gets sick and we have to fund it through overtime, that's usually where we have overages, and then we have to fund those somehow.
You'll be getting a town council reserve fund transfer request next week.
And how much is that going to be for?
I'm projecting that out this week. That's why you didn't have it for today.
Ballpark.
2-3 grand.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I'm guessing. Don't hold me to it, because if something comes up when I talk to Dan tomorrow, I want to make sure it's okay. That's why I didn't give an initial number. But yes.
So
Oh, go ahead.
procedurally, how would we go about it now? We just go down this list and assign a percentage?
Can I pipe in for a second, Karen?
Yep.
So Pete, you could do that. Where that triggers some difficulty is that for certain departments, their expenses are tied to some of their operations. So
Right.
for instance, in the library, there's an account that specifically says this line item must be 5% of all other line items in your budget, or all percent of the salaries that you give out to all your employees. In the fire department, the SAFER grant that we just got last year from the federal government that we hired
Right.
those 4 firefighters off of, it's written in the stipulations of that grant that if we are to cut even one firefighter that's not, it may not even be any of the 4 that we just hired through that grant, but if we cut one full-time firefighter, we lose the grant, have to lay off those 4 that we got from the grant, and have to pay the federal government back for the money that they've given us to pay for them up to this point. So there's different stipulations that trigger in different departments there, be it cutting a line item that we don't have control to cut over, like that line item in the libraries, or cutting what looks like one person in the fire department side, actually meaning a reduction of up to 5 people in our staffing.
So, can I ask a question? Maybe we just literally go through the budget department by department by department, and 2 things. One, let's know what we have stipulations like what you're talking about. And then also maybe let's talk about what has happened in last year or even the year before. You know, yes, they cut 2% last year, they cut 2% the year before, but this department, well, you know, I don't know if that's, maybe we do it department by department.
I mean, it's worth the conversation, I think. Like I said before, I was just, well, yeah, I mean, and again, this isn't something like the hard conversations that are significant just to us. Again, this is something everyone's facing, which is why the state is taking the stance about using stabilization that they're taking. And like I said, they've never, ever done that before. They never advise spending out of your savings account. But like they said, if this is a rainy day fund, we're in the middle of a hurricane.
But also, if departments think, oh, well, we have 150,000 we can take out, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't cut 1 or 2 or 3%. And we don't want to do that. If we don't need to use it, or if we can use a tiny bit of it, that would be a whole lot better.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at, the budget that's before you is level funded, and except for salaries for both union and the COLAs were put in. Those expense items we normally spend fully every year. If you look at now, some of them are over. Town council, that's why we're going for a reserve fund transfer next week. I think we see things like what you're saying when the initial budget requests come in, but we've already cut $300,000 out of their budget request to get to where we are now. Almost 4, actually. So that's why I would be cutting things more now yeah, paper supplies here and there that could go, but some of this could mean reductions in hours and services and things like that.
So are we at that point? Are we at the point where there's not enough meat on that bird to be able to take away the stuff that's the easy stuff, and now we have to go for the really muscle?
Yes.
So we're talking about having to go back to the departments and ask them to tell us what they're going to do with their staffing to be able to get us the 150,000.
Most likely.
Okay. I mean, if that's what we need to do, then that's what we need to do. I don't like that at all, but if that's what needs to be done, that's what we need to do.
Personally, I understand the situation that we're in, and I understand the concerns we are in, and I'll do what the committee and the select board decide and to do. I would be against that. In my opinion, and again, just as the advisor to both of these groups, given the situation we're in, is it a terrible situation? Yes. Would normally be a terrible idea? Yes. But if the state is using it as the suggestion for every city and town, that's why I'd like to proceed with what those experts are saying.
Okay, but then next year, how are we going to make this up? That's the problem. Whether we do it now, because we can, or we cut them next year. We put everybody on notice that next year is going to be tough and better cut, I don't know what, I mean, I know that they're saying we can use it, but they're not saying they're going to use it. And they're saying now, the other thing they're saying is that if the virus gets worse, there's potential for another shutdown.
It's also like a lot of communities out towards 485 are in a lot better fiscal shape with a lot more money than what we have. It's just it's easier if you're in a better financial position.
I don't disagree with either of those. I'm just and Mitch, that the conversation that we had was a regional one. It's for Worcester County, and I get both concerns. Like I said, I would never normally go with this plan, and it does.
Yeah, I agree. Worcester County, though, you look, Milford, Shrewsbury, Holden, they're in a better fiscal spot to deal with some of these issues than we are. It's tough.
So I'd like to make a motion that we get to the point where we're only taking 10% out of the current balance of our stabilization, because that's how much we put in every year. So let's take out only 10%, which is about $99,000, and let's cut the rest.
I'll second that.
Ian. Ian, you're muted. That's my bad. Let me fix that. Go ahead.
All right. I'm unmuted now?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So let's go back to, you guys have a motion on the floor at this point. So you probably you're going to have to vote on that first. And then let's go to some discussion, I guess. So Karen, I guess finish off what you're doing and then let me jump in afterwards.
Well, we've got a first and a second, so now at this point it's discussion.
Right.
All right. So we're talking about the school budget passing as is, with what you're talking about and taking the money off. Mm-hmm. Now, that may not happen, because if two other towns decide that they're not going to vote for it, the school budget's going to have to go to that 1/12, and then they're going to have to come back with a different number. Is that correct?
Yep.
So we may not be looking at this number. I mean, I agree with what Karen said earlier when I logged on. You were talking about having different budgets, and we're definitely going to have to go forward with 2 or 3 budgets. And I had talked to Mike about doing a budget that was giving the school that 3.5% that we had talked about when we went to their original meeting, and giving the rest, giving us our budget and seeing where we were at. I'm not sure where that came out. I haven't had a chance to look at it, Mike.
Yeah, it's not in your folders for this evening because I just got to make sure all our required stuff isn't what gets cut. That's all.
Okay.
The stuff that's state mandated.
All right. So I mean, that's what I had asked to see where we were at. If we said, I mean, I have you gone over that? What you heard from the school superintendent, Mike?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So everybody knows about that. We need to look at these budgets, and I think we need to try to figure out how to do that level funding. And I'd really like to know if we offered a 3.5%. We don't know where this is going to come out. And when are the other two towns meeting? Are they before us or after us?
Some are before, and I think we're the last. We might be the last, if not the second to last. Holden might be meeting on the Monday after ours, but I believe everyone else is before ours.
So we would have a much better idea of where we're at.
Yes.
Where that school budget's going to go.
Yep.
Now, if that school budget went to the 1/12th, Mike, where would that put us?
We just go with whatever budget we have at that point. So long as we're funding our municipal departments and have something passed for the schools, that's where we go. So if the school goes into a 1/12th, and we've passed our budget, we continue with the budget that we've passed. Even though that's half of our budget, we passed a budget for the school. And if the school needs more than what they've asked for, which they actually legally can't do, then we go back in the fall and we can adjust it then. If they come in at less than what we've appropriated, we can go in the fall at a special town meeting or call a special town meeting anytime. Excuse me, all it requires is a 3-week notification. And we can actually adjust down that number and reallocate that funding as well.
So that's what I want to bring out, is that if they have that 1/12th, what are they actually taking from us? Is it 1/12th of what we approve on the town meeting, or is it 1/12th of last year's budget?
1/12th of this current year's budget.
Okay. So how would that go forward? So they get 1/12th on July, August, September, and they finally come back with a budget, and it actually gets approved by all the towns.
That budget would go from the date of passage forward.
Okay. And then what would we be at financially if they are at a 1/12th? Where would we fall right now? I think
higher.
So we're going to have to give them more?
No.
So we would be better. We're better off if they go 1/12th.
Yes. Because if you think the next year's budget proposal that they have is a $700,000 increase from last year's, so it's 1/12th of a assessment that's $700,000 less.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that everybody thinks about that as well, in going through with this whole budget. Got questions, Peter?
Yeah, I guess I'm confused with. I understand the 1/12th, and if the 1/12th is of a lower number, not including the 750 that they were intending to add, it would give us it'd give us our money. We would be fine I think at that point. Well, maybe not fine because we still have to take 200,000 out, but
well, not necessarily actually.
Okay, but and I understand that, but when the hell are we going to know about that? Are we going to know about that, 20 minutes before our meeting, or?
It happens all the time.
And I understand it does, but
it's very
we're so close now. Normally, if we were doing this in the May timeframe, we'd still be what, 2-3 weeks to the time that the budget has to be done. Now we're pushing it right up to the end. So I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, in a normal year, we wouldn't even be having this discussion because Dan and I would have said bump excise up. Because we know we normally lowball 350,000 in excise from what we normally have. We just don't know where our excise tax numbers are going to be next year. So we may wash, we may not, who knows? Yeah, normally we wouldn't even be having a discussion for something. Anything lower than 200,000 we normally wouldn't have be still working on the budget at this point.
Correct.
Steve, very nicely.
I just, if I can say, I'm not a fan of the motion just because of the fact that if we pass this, we're saying we're not going to accept any more than 10%. What if we need 11 or 12 and it's going to what we need? I mean, I think it's a little soon at this point to say absolutely we're going to just agree on 10. That's all I got to say.
Ian Mitch has his hand up as well.
Yeah, Mitch.
Oh, through the chair. I just, I understand the thought process behind the school and the 112. Look, the school budget, as everybody knows, kind of becomes like a political hot potato. Every year. I just, I'm not sure what way. I don't know if you can count on what way that's going to go. Because I just, look, I'm not sure how that's going to fall at town meeting. It's just one of those things where you can plan, and that might be what's best for the town. But in reality, people have reservations about not approving the school budget as it is. I mean, there was some good stuff in the school budget if you're a parent and that kind of thing. So it's just something to think about.
So
Mitch, I can agree with it. And this town normally will vote for whatever the school is asking for, and that's basically because of the amount of people that work for the school system that live in our town.
Right.
So we're kind of looking at what the other towns will do at this point as well.
Yeah.
And that's where I was coming up with that.
No, I totally understand the conversation. I just wanted to throw that out there. It's just, and I'm guilty of it too. I work for, education. So it's just, throwing it out, I guess, for whatever contingency that's worth.
So procedurally, we have warrants for the town operating expenses and for the school expenses, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so the town can vote to approve one and not approve the other.
Correct.
Yep.
So if we are level funded, if the town departments are level funded and don't have any increase, then we go into the year making sure that everything is being accommodated there. Now, if the school budget comes in over, do we have to make it up out of the other one once the town votes for it?
We cannot give the school anything higher than what the town votes for. If it were to come in higher, which is not legally allowed to do, we'd have to go to another special town meeting and reappropriate funding.
So do we have I'm just asking now, but do we have the option to be able to say, let's take the difference of our deficit out of the school number and just say that's what we will approve?
I'm going to say yes and no, and the caveat with that is you absolutely can do that. You just have to make sure your minimum state mandated portions of the expenses are met. So that comes from the transportation contract, net minimum school spending, and there's one more, something else. But once it's the debt service, because that's in the contract that we have with the school. So once our allocations for those three items are met, the fourth option that comes in the school budget, we can cut. That's up to the town's discretion as to what it can cut. So long as I can pull that up tomorrow. So long as your first three levels are met and funded, and you cut from that fourth level, that's fully allowed. But if you cut enough that you start to dig into those last three levels, that's where you have an issue.
Well, so that would at least give us a sizing. We know where we are and what our real bogey is going to be. Right now, it's 152 plus 200. If we were able to go back and take a look at that and say that this would be the amount that we would accept out of that level, that fourth level, then we have a better understanding of what our number would be. And maybe it covers everything. I don't know, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, that 200,000, you've got to remember, it's always been 150,000 that we use every year. So it's 50,000 more this year than which we would normally do.
Right. But again,
we
it's
don't-
going
we
into
don't like to use it
stabilization,
at
so that's
all.
good.
We don't really like to use it at all, but we've had to
Right.
based on what's going on. And then you've still got that 152,000. We're actually taking out of the stabilization fund.
Right.
So that's a different fund that we've got. We've got 900,000 in that account.
Right.
And that's the one that I believe that you guys are talking about right now. If that's how Karen's, I believe that's where that 10% is what she's asking for. Not to take more than 10% of the 900,000 or whatever we have now. Is that number? Is that right, Karen?
I also just wanted to clarify too, the way the financial policies are written, the 10% that we are required to put in every year is not 10% of what's in the stabilization account. It's 10% of the general fund budget. So like, for instance, last year we put in $30,000.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So you realize that. So we're still going to be taking out more than we're going to probably be able to put away in a year, or even 2, or even 3. But
Yeah, I think that's why the state was putting the 10-year timeline on it. But yeah, I agree. Ian and Wayne, Leah has her hand raised.
Leah?
Sorry, I just wanted to make a question clarification. I think if the school budget passes in the other 4 towns, though, then Rutland is required to pay their portion, regardless of whether Rutland approved the school budget or not, and then the other departments are cut that percentage. So it's fine. My understanding is it's fine for us to go and present at town meeting a school budget that fits into our town budget. If the school budget as a whole passes in the 4 other towns, then the 5th town is still on the hook for paying the full amount and figuring out their own budget with those additional cuts that would be needed.
that's correct.
Yep.
But that's why I asked Leah when the other town meetings were, so we would know that before going in.
Yep.
So we're trying to, that's why if we have, with where we're falling with our town meeting, it actually helps us to have an idea of where we're going with this budget.
Yeah, no, I just wanted it to be a reminder for all of us that, kind of in the back of our heads, that there's always that possibility, and a contingency plan needs to be in place if that were to happen.
Yep. Oh, it's there. Don't worry. So we need to do something about the motion on the floor.
Okay.
So
Does any more discussion? Does anyone want to have, I'm just trying to throw things out there because I just don't think taking $152,000 out of our stabilization is a good idea.
So we need a vote, right?
Yep.
One more discussion point. It does seem early to be voting for this until we get a little bit more of an idea. So, I mean, we obviously will go and vote, but it just seems, I suppose we can always then have another vote and say, we want to take out 11% or 5% or whatever. I mean, this is just for discussion for the next step, right? I mean, can we vote on this again and change our mind?
Yep. Can change our mind as many times as we want, but the fact is that we need to start somewhere, because the fact is we just can't, I don't think we can blanketly just say we're going to take out 15% of our stabilization. Don't worry about it. We'll think we'll be able to put it away or put it back in 10 years. I just don't think that's going to be an easy thing to do.
But you're not talking 50% of your stabilization fund.
15%.
No, 15,
okay. 15% of our stabilization fund. That's going to be tough, considering last year was a good year. We were able to put away 30. It's tough.
Absolutely, it's tough. And we've been in worse as well.
Yep.
It's a tough number, but, how much more can you actually cut out of these departments?
I agree.
And I know where you're coming from. I just don't know what else you can do. I know overtime, and you mentioned earlier, but hopefully a lot of the overtime right now will be able to be used towards the COVID fund that we have the extra money there, bill that back for this year. I'm not sure, Mike, is that possible?
So my picture's frozen on my screen. Can someone confirm that you can hear me before I answer that?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. In terms of the COVID fund,
Can't hear you.
Now we can't hear you.
You're stuck.
Yeah, looks like you're stuck.
There's a lot of problems with the Zoom recently.
Because everybody in the universe is using it all day, every day.
So Mike, you're moving again.
Today.
I'm moving again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I was in the middle of trying to call in. So the guidance that we're getting from the state in terms of the coronavirus funding that we're receiving in assistance right now is it can only go towards expenses that are directly related to a COVID issue that the town is facing. So for instance, all of the overtime that we are currently spending now on shifts that we're backfilling for Detective Sanji, who's in the hospital, all of that overtime can be covered. Any flyers and stuff like that that the Board of Health is putting out, all that paper and the ink from the printer that they are expending on those if it's a COVID-related information post, all of that is covered. However, at this time, we are not allowed to say, you know what, let's just take $30,000 in overtime in next year's budget and just put part of that CARES Act funding toward that. That's a discussion that they're leaning toward having, but at this time, we are not allowed to do that.
So if they're leaning towards that, that would, if they do actually fall over in that direction, then that would provide us some benefits, right?
Correct.
Okay. When are we going to know that?
We are hoping quite soon, solely because everything that we're spending in this current fiscal year related to the CARES Act, which is the Coronavirus Assistance Fund, that has to be submitted to the federal government by June 5th. So we're thinking either just before June 5th or just after is when they'll make the clearance, when they start to see, because for a lot of municipalities, not just us, the allocation that we got for the CARES Act is a good 10 to 15 times higher than we expected. So we're hoping that once they see, I mean, we can go in and we can spend on everything we wanted to if we wanted and buy whatever the hell we could, whatever we could related to the virus and just buy a lot of signs and a lot of masks and things like that. But if we actually do what we're spending, we actually have a lot left that we could then carry over for revenue.
So the 5th is 2 weeks out.
Yep.
So to Carol's point, maybe we should delay this.
The
Ian
27th.
says yes.
Why
Karen
don't we
says
do
no.
it to the 26th and we'll just throw numbers in? We got to have the tough discussions now. We can't wait. We've been pushing off and pushing off and pushing off. Listen, it's not going to get any better.
Well, so Karen, from the perspective of your motion, what you're saying is not to exceed 10%. We won't take more than 10%.
I want us to make a motion. My motion was that we will not exceed 10% or $99,600 to take out of the stabilization fund to fund our budget.
Right. And Dave's point was that, well, what if we need 11%?
Then we make a motion later on and say that, but let's go with the premise that that's where we start.
Or
We change it.
we could very easily say it's 10% and it's 10%. And if they need an extra percent or two, then it might have to come out of the spending someplace. To Ian's point, it might be a lot to ask, but they may be in a better position to be able to deal with the 1% or 2% rather than the 15.
Yeah, you're right. But I look at it as next year, it's not going to get any better. So what are we going to do? Tell everybody, good, you got a great idea here. We're gonna pass you through. But listen, guys, we're going to be hitting cuts next year. Next year isn't looking any better.
So we probably have to have that conversation now anyway. But
So
Okay.
my whole thing is why keep kicking the can down the road? Let's take some hard look now because it's not going to get any better.
But that's not what the state is telling Michael.
Their
Right,
policy.
Mike?
That is, both of those statements are correct right there.
Nobody's wrong. That's great.
They didn't think that this is going to hurt our economy nearly the way it was. But you know what? These things happen. I get it. But
What is it? I'm here from the government and I'm here to help. The most dangerous.
Ian, Ted has his hand up.
Go ahead, Ted.
So let's say we take a vote here, and on the motion, we'd essentially be going to ask the departments to give us another budget that cuts some of that out and gets us to that 10%. We still have the original number.
Mhm.
So in some sense, it's, if we ask them to do it, it's kind of how does that look and how much does it hurt? Because we can change our mind, right?
We can. We can, and we can also, in to the point of changing the school and say, listen, this is what we feel we can give the school. And we said that to begin with. We went to them well before their budget came out, and we said, please, 3.5%. Their number is ridiculously higher than that. And at some point, the town people have to stand up and say, okay, where is this going, and how do we fix the school budget situation? Because that's what the real issue is.
The problem is the average town person doesn't really pay attention to when the budget's being made and what the school's doing. All they see is at the end when we present it to them.
Yep. So you have a motion. You're going to have to move on that, I would think, at this point.
so let's take a roll call vote. Peter,
Aye.
Carol,
Can I abstain?
you can.
I'm not ready. No, I say no.
Okay. Ted,
Aye.
David,
No.
Tom,
No.
Ian,
I'm going to say no at this point. I want some more information.
so throw out some other ideas, guys.
I mean, we're looking at that. I want to see that other budget that Mike is working on and giving that school the number.
Okay, that's great as an alternative, but it's a rare case that passes on town floor. So we have to have another option.
Oh, we're going to have four budgets. There's no question.
So,
I mean, we've known that for 2 months now going into this, that there's going to be 4 different budgets that we're going to have ready.
yeah, so,
The problem is when we get on the floor and we have, or however it's going to be held, the townspeople don't look at the nitty gritty, every little number. They just think, yeah, I want that. Okay, I'm gonna vote for it. They don't think like Karen, like you're saying, okay, well, next year we have to come up with $350,000 that we don't have, plus additional for the schools, plus. So it's, I don't know that we want to have too much wiggle room in there. We need to guide them towards what is the least painful and the most realistic moving forward.
I'm all for it, but unfortunately, the school does a great job of getting the word out that we're gonna cut the budget and that this means this, and this. And before you know it, we have a bunch of enraged individuals there to vote for the school budget.
Yeah, they do it without even thinking. If
Right.
the school wants this, we're going to give it to them.
Right.
I mean, last year it was like, sure, whatever they want.
Well, so if that becomes the case, then it's going to be the town meeting that will direct the information back to the town departments to say, you have to cut.
But we have to be ready with those cuts.
I understand that.
So we have to start somewhere. So where does somebody want to start?
Mike, I have a question.
Yep.
You're obviously intimately involved in every department, I hope.
Yeah, I try.
Can you lead us towards, and we won't tell that you said, where we can start talking about? I mean,
You've got three major departments that we can look at. You got DPW, you've got the police, and you got the fire. That's where your bulk of our money goes to in this town.
Yeah, but we can't do the fire, right? If we do anything with the fire and they have to cut anybody, we're going to lose those people that we just cut. So.
And we have to pay back the money.
Exactly.
So now your fire's out. So now you're down to two departments.
Right.
Your public safety and your DPW. Which the DPW, I think, is what, 4 positions or 5 positions underfunded already?
Yes. The question was asked earlier. I was able to find the information during that last bit of discussion there. Of the school district's total allocation, the stuff that we are, I shouldn't say it like this, but all of the things that are not required payments is 17.1 million.
Only 17.1?
Of the total.
Yeah. What's our portion of that?
That's Rutland's operational share.
So 17.1 million we have to come up with.
No.
That's the part
that's excluding all of our required portions of the assessment.
Okay, and what percentage of that is his increase?
8.2.
So if we took 8.2 off of that 17 million
to level fund,
we're gravy.
Yep.
I mean, that's the problem is if the school had come in.
Oh, excuse me. My apologies. I read the full district. Rutland pays 3.8 million on that, and that's a 7.33 increase. I was like, I know we don't pay.
That sounded a lot of money. So
I thought the allocation was like 13 million.
It is. That's why I was like, this isn't right. And that's why I kept looking. Yeah, no, our operational costs that Rutland pays is 3.8 million. Last year was 3.6.
But that's still a 7% increase, Mike?
Yeah, it's the 200,000. Yeah, $200,000. 264,882.
We got extra.
Boy, we're in the money.
Yeah.
I mean, and you give them 50,000 more, and you make it that way. You know, you're giving them extra, but
they should be happy with the extra 50. So how do we proceed with this then? I mean, I understand the reluctance to be able to go back to the departments that, really don't have enough resources right now, I don't think, based upon what we've heard. Because they've taken anything that might have been a pad out of the budget. And as long as that's the case, do we leave it the way it is and set the expectation that we're going to come in 7.5% less on that, or $200,000 less on the school budget?
I mean, that's going to be one option that we can have. Absolutely.
Okay.
We can present a budget that shows that this is what we feel that we can afford to give to the school.
Okay.
Absolutely, that's an option. You're going to also have to have the option that you have to full fund them. So there's 2 budgets.
Hey, we're 2 down.
The third one is using the 152 out of stabilization to full fund. Take the 152 out.
That's the only other way to do that. So that's the second budget.
Yep.
Right? So now a third budget is not touching the 150,000.
And giving the school.
and cutting and giving the school and figuring out how many positions we cut out of the town.
That's all you can do.
So there's your 3 options.
Right, but isn't there a fourth? I mean, not, we probably should be prepared for it, and Mike had mentioned it earlier. Maybe we propose to the town that they need to look at a tax increase. No one's going to like that. I know that. But if we're presenting if we're presenting options that the town meeting could make, maybe they have to see all of them.
You've got that, and now you've also got, you also have the 5th if the school goes to that 1/12.
1/12.
So you really have, we're at almost five different options is what we have that we could present.
But doing a 2.5 override would require another election.
I was just going to say that.
I was going to say, you can't do it at the same, you have to have a different.
Right. And
yeah, it has to have an election.
It's always contingent upon passing. So therefore, we could go to the polls and be right back where we started with nothing.
Okay.
Ian, to answer the question that was asked earlier, so Rutland's town meeting is going to be on Saturday, June 27th at 4. Sterling is June 22nd. Princeton is also on the 27th, like us, but earlier in the day at 10 a.m. Paxton will be on the 22nd at 7 p.m. as well, and then Holden is on the Monday after us. So we will be the 4th in order for the town meetings in the Wachusett District.
So we will know where we stand
Yeah.
when we go to our meeting.
Yeah.
We'll know if two out of the other 3 have already said no.
2 out of the other 4. Oh yeah, 2 out of, yes, yep.
Right?
Yep.
And that's what as long as 2 say no, then they have to go to their 1/12 budget.
Correct.
Should we be spending
We may actually know on the 22nd.
We might know on the 22nd. Yeah, if both those towns say no.
Okay. But we have to have proposals available to discuss on the floor.
Yep.
And how much detail do we have to have? Do we just, show a number of, what is it?
I'm going to give the whole budget to all the townsfolk because they need to see the whole thing. We don't want to be like the school and only give half-ass answers. We want to give we want to be transparent with the taxpayers.
But there's only going to be the one article, right? And it's going to be a lump sum.
That's correct. Right.
So
this would be
the article that if we go ahead and we do recommend it as approval as a committee, that detail would be the detail that we show. Do we need to be able to provide that same level of detail for all the other options?
Yes.
We do. Okay. Then if that's the case, we need to start working on that.
You need to start cutting and showing them what it's going to be without, they're going to have to come back and show me how many positions they're going to have to lose.
Okay.
We've got that $152,000.
So the one where the school, where we don't accept the school budget, we don't have to do anything with that. That's just us saying, no, this is the number. The one with the 112, that's just a number. If we decide that we have to accept whatever the school is, then we have to get the departments to give us a number.
Well, yeah, and the other part of that is that you have 2 options on that one, because you have the money coming out of the stabilization fund,
right? Or
you have the money being cut,
right?
Or we have the percentage coming out of the stabilization. If we say it's at 10% or 11% and that's it, then that's what we figure where the rest of the cuts have to come out.
Oh boy, well.
So I think we get the budget. Mike's working on that budget with the 112.
He's not working on the 3.5% increase for the Wachusett. That's the one he's working on.
Yeah, 3.5. But then we also have to work on the 112. We have to have an idea where that number actually is. The problem is that's only going to be for a certain time frame, Mike. Was that correct?
Correct. Until they pass one.
So then we're going to have to go back and then.
Now, the issue, what we'll have to remember too, is that the school passing a budget requires us to then go in and have another town meeting to pass it, because it has to be passed by the towns. So then again, we're going back into the situation where there's a one article town meeting and it's a school budget. And if it fails, then do we go back and have another town meeting? You know, so it's just until it passes.
Okay.
Okay.
Just as a quick aside, can I ask a question? What is our tax rate as compared with the other towns around us?
I'd have to look. I know our tax rate is 17 and change. I'm not sure what the other Wachusett towns are.
Nobody knows?
It's not, Paxton's higher. The problem with tax rate, right, is valuation.
Yeah.
Really, really what the median tax income is really the better number. Tax rates mean nothing. It all depends on what they value the house at.
Right.
So we just need to know what the average taxpayer pays, and then compared to another town, and then you'd have your answer that way. It'd be easier.
Yeah, but then you, as a real estate person, it doesn't matter what the house costs. When you tell somebody that the tax rate is 17.5%, oh, I'm going someplace else. Yeah, you know, there's a mental.
I've sold houses where people think like they have $12 tax rates and they're better, but they live in Shrewsbury. So the same house, they're paying $5,000 more in taxes just because it's valued higher.
Right.
So rate, if you explain that to them, rate doesn't mean anything. It's all about how much you're paying on taxes.
In theory, I completely agree. I know that when I pay my taxes, and I used to live in California, so.
It's pretty average. Our taxes are pretty average.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
Yep.
So do we need a to-do list of things we have to get done?
Respectfully, I think we have it.
Okay.
I think it's from the discussions we've had here. It's the 4 different budgets based on all those situations that myself and the department heads will get to you for your next meeting.
Okay.
Yep. Is there anything else? You guys are, I'm not sure where you are, Karen.
The town of Holden pays $17 for tax rate. So their salaries are higher than Holden.
Rate wise, but the average person in Holden pays more money per house.
I agree, but rate wise,
Once
just
again,
think of that.
Like the famous line is, Karen, right? Numbers don't lie, but you can certainly lie with them.
I agree wholeheartedly. But yes, we pay they pay 17, we pay more than that. So
Yeah.
you wanted that, I gave you that.
Well, I know, like Paxton's 18 something. You know, it's all depends. So.
Yep.
I want to say ours is 1761. I just want to check before. That's
before you say it on TV.
Hey.
All right. Well, it's not easy.
So are we going to have a conversation on the warrant? Was that the other thing? If we're done with this?
The Board of Selectmen haven't placed the warrant articles yet. They're placing them on June 1st. So,
Good. Okay.
I would say it's probably, I don't know, my suggestion would be is that we post a meeting at the same time as the select board at that point so that we could chime in on our concerns, issues when they're placing them.
All righty.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Me too.
So what else do we have, Karen, on that agenda? I'm not, like I said, I apologize. I had something going on with my parents.
Mike's got something brand new that he said he wanted to talk about.
So under other business, I just wanted to give a brief rundown of the CARES Act. And I know I've talked about it a lot in this meeting, but just so it's all there. There are there are many different programs that the federal government has released, all for the same or similar purpose, and it's for coronavirus relief. CARES is Coronavirus Assistance and Relief E. I don't know what that E stands for in CARES. But the way that the act is written is right now we can take everything we have spent or plan to spend by the end of the fiscal year and have them fund that for us, so long as it's coronavirus related. Police overtime to backfill for our officer who's in the hospital, a ventilator for the ambulance, the clickers for a town meeting, because we'll be buying voting clickers that looks something similar to this, where rather than having a voice vote yes or no because we're having a drive-in town meeting, it's push A for yes, push B for no, and then the computer automatically tabulates it like that to try to save time there. It's all these things here are covered under that. What is not is we cannot say we expect we're going to be $455,000 short in revenue for this year, so we're just going to take that money and push it there. That's not allowed currently for this current fiscal year. And where they may be allowing that is next fiscal year, not now. There's also a FEMA assistance program. If we can tie something in out of all of these things we've spent to a public safety purpose, FEMA will come in and fund 75% of that, and then you can use your CARES Act money to cover just that 25% that we then owe after FEMA's done reimbursing that 75. So for instance, when I sat down with the department heads, I looked at the Board of Health people that were there, and I said, project out what you need between now and December 31st and tell me what you think. Well, they came up with $200,000 of expenses. Now, a lot of that is to quote what the statute says for the FEMA assistance funding, it's to combat the immediate threat of the pandemic or to protect the public health and safety. Well, almost everything on their list met that definition. So rather than going for $200,000 of CARES Act funding to cover that, we can put in for FEMA assistance funding. They'll cover 75% of that, and now we're only taking $50,000 out of the CARES Act rather than $200,000 out of the CARES Act. Because anything, again, that's left over after we're done covering our expenses, that's what we would be able to then plug into our revenue after that.
What
So,
about Canarchioli's sign for $30,000 that we're warning the people? I'm perfectly serious. You know,
Yeah.
he's up there telling people what to do, where to go, how to get a mask, that kind of thing.
that would be approved is what we're being told.
Maybe we should talk about that.
We brought this up. It wouldn't be approved under FEMA, but it is fully approved under the CARES Act because we can use it for notifications on how to protect yourself, wear a mask, stay social distant. When we do get to the point when we have a vaccination, we've already been told we'll have a mass inoculation event where we'll have to set up a temporary injection site somewhere to do a mass vaccine event. So we could direct people that way. We've already applied to have an antibody testing site in town in which the town will get some money off of that, putting information on the board for that if we do get approved for that situation. Because of all of those public health related issues there, they would approve us.
Great. Do they pay, does CARES pay 100%, did you say?
CARES is 100%, FEMA is 75, and then the rest is coming out of CARES.
Right, but that would be a CARES.
Yeah.
So who does that?
So how the statute's written is I have to sit down with specific department heads, and then I sign off on it, and the town accountant signs it, and then we notify the boards and commissions as to what we've put in for and where the money's going. Now, why it's been explained to us on how it's working and what's usually a backwards situation there, because normally we have the discussion with the boards and commissions, and then they send us back to the department heads based on what the boards and commissions wanted, is there was a concern at the federal and state level for the agencies administering this account that there would be some political pulls one way or the other on these. So they've flipped it to where it's the appointed personnel coming up with things and then letting the boards and commissions know there. Now I will be letting you and the select board know every step of the way what happens there, because I personally am not comfortable doing that even with the department head committees that we have there. I hope that it's come across that I like to share information with you all as things come up. So we will certainly be letting you know. But the official thing is once I sign it and then Dan signs it to attest that all my math is correct and I'm not actually committing corruption, then it goes from there.
How soon will the CARES Act funding come through?
2 weeks.
Okay. How about FEMA?
2 weeks to a month and a half. The approval letters come through within a couple days.
Oh,
The
yeah.
checks themselves come in during those time periods.
Would I be making a motion to have you, Mike, talk to the public safety, whoever, I'm back to the sign thing, being as it needs to go to that person first, and then would that, how does that work?
We've already started looking into it.
Okay, good.
And then again, we have just under $780,000 in CARES funding.
Our kids are going to be paying for this forever, our grandkids.
Well, I understand that the government's come up with some kind of a miraculous bonding process that they're going to figure it all out on. So
basically, you remember a couple months ago, the same legislative package that approved the stimulus checks that everyone got from the federal government. That is the CARES Act, that big thing there. And then the line items in that budget is what gets apportioned out. So the money that we're getting from the FEMA assistance program, that is a chunk of the CARES Act. And then each state had their own line item in the CARES Act as well. So Massachusetts got $2.7 billion. And then from that $2.7 billion, they divided it up per capita among the cities and towns. So Rutland's per capita share got us just under $780,000. A town like Holden side, I think Holden just got over $1 million, just a hair over or something like that. So it's population based. But that's our allocation for both fiscal years. So it's not like we want to find $780,000 right now to spend on stuff to close out this fiscal year. We want to have that buffer in there for next year, preferably at least $156,000, so that if we go into next year and they allow us to use that as revenue supplementation, we can go there.
A little glimmer of hope.
Little glimmer is correct.
Or
But that's
whatever
why
tunnel.
we are being urged on the municipal management side of things to reach out to our congressional delegation to request that those decisions start being decisions and not just discussions soon, so we can at least plan one way or the other, whether it's yes or no. And we're being told to ask our residents to do the same. So if you do want to help out with that part there, please write to Congressman McGovern to request that be done. Or send a letter from the Finance Committee, or we'll do something. It's whatever the pleasure of the board or the individuals are at that point. But at least I myself as town administrator will be sending a letter.
I don't think it can hurt not to send a letter.
Right.
I think we should be doing that too.
Okay, Ian, draft it up.
I was just going to say, do we have a motion that we do something like that?
I'll make a motion that we draft a letter to Congressman McGovern.
I second it.
Any discussion?
I'll be
Just-
CCing my contact at the White House that I went and visited when I was down there in October, just to try to, I doubt it's going to go anywhere, but we could use all the help we could get.
So who drafts the letter?
We need
The
to
last-
do a roll call vote. Michael draft it.
Yeah.
Okay, roll call. Ian?
Yes. Dave,
Yes.
Pete,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Ted.
Aye.
Motion passes. If you can send that letter out on behalf of the committee, we'd appreciate it, Mike.
Will do. CARES is Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security. So
There you go.
CARES. Thank you, Leah.
Is there anything else on the agenda?
I don't think so. I don't have it open anymore.
No, that was it.
Anyone want to make a motion to close?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Peter,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Ted,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Committee is adjourned for tonight.